Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interview Wednesday. It is the last day of August, August 31st, 2022. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just open up the Zoom chat window. You can get your questions in there. For those watching on Facebook, just enter your questions in the comment field. We're monitoring both feeds. We'll be sure to get all those questions answered for you. Please note this event is being recorded. It's currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. And if you want to put your contact information there, it's a great way to network with everybody else who's on the call. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started a second website just 10 years ago, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon, and I usually have copies with me if you ever see me in person. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s, and I'll tell you about our upcoming program this Friday at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been part of the practice interview team, also known as the PIT Crew. You'll hear more about that in just a moment. Well, we've got two speakers who talk about interviewing Wednesdays. When COVID started and we had to stop meeting the practice interview team on Wednesdays, I asked Mark and Walt if they would put together something that we could use for interviewing. Today, we don't have a scheduled practice interview, so we're going to actually be going back and watching one of our lessons, actually session number 1, about preparing for an interview. But before we do that, I want to have Walt and Mark both introduce yourself. So Walt, if you'll go first.
Oh boy, I get to go first today. 3 out of 179. Well, good morning or good afternoon, I guess it is now, everyone. I'm Walt Glass, and I am an interview success coach, and I love to help people gain confidence and skills for a successful hiring interview. So what is a successful hiring interview? Well, there's 3 or 4 things that I'd like to mention. Number 1 is, if they're buying who we are, our characteristics and soft skills, what we do, our actions, our activities, our knowledge and hard skills, and how we can help, the value that we can bring, and also being different in an interview than other candidates, that would be a good interview, successful interview, if we're able to sell those 3 items. So I can help you learn how to do that. So the interview success workshop is what I offer. It's free. It's very informal. And its purpose is to learn how to sell who we are, what we do, and how we help. We will cover the 12 different categories of questions. We'll look at motives. We'll look at strategies, structures, options, ways we might answer a question, because questions depend on the question, who's asking you, where you're in the process. So how can we change our responses based on those 3 elements? How can we sell I am, I do, I help? So all you have to do is send me an email. That QR code starts an email to say, I'd like to register for the workshop. And I will send you back some availability dates. I reserve every Tuesday, 9 to 11 Central for the workshop, and can do others as demand occurs. So it's very informal. I only do 1 or 2 people at a time. If you want some more details about it, look me up on LinkedIn under Walt Glass, and it gives you that, and also tells you how to reach me. So I'm glad to have you participate. There's no stress. We're going to just talk about things. We're going to discuss things. We're going to try to improve our responses and sell those 3 elements. So we call it learning without squirming.
Thank you very much, Walt. Mark, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And so my story is I assumed responsibility for leading the PIT Crew in 2013 after I had been laid off for the 3rd time in 10 years. And so this may have happened to some of you as well. My industry, which was telecommunications, electronics, specialized electronics for the phone companies, started to shrink in the early 2000s and continues to shrink today. It's pretty amazing. But so consolidations and, companies that I worked for going out of business kind of drove those layoffs that I was included in. I now claim expertise, though, in being laid off and finding your way back. And so when I came to the pit crew, I had a lot of optimism, and I continue to have optimism that if you're in job transition, you're going to find something better. And Walt and I are here to help you achieve that. The pit crew is all about giving you a chance to practice in as realistic a setting as we can come up with, delivering your interview. So Walt will teach you a lot of things about what you want to say and what you want to convey and how you want to say it. And there's just a wealth of information. The pit crew is all about actually practicing doing that, because knowing how to do something doesn't mean that's really what's going to happen when you're in the situation. So we try to put you in a realistic situation. We do that, and you help us do that by providing a job description that you select. It could be something that you've been contacted by a recruiter for, or it could just be a job description that looks really good for you, something that you'd like to use just to practice, to build your skills, to hone the language that you want to use to describe yourself and the value you bring. So the pit crew is very flexible in this regard. We encourage you to practice early and practice often. So early means early in your job search activities, even before you have a relationship with a recruiter or recruiting, or you've been recruited by a company. Just pick out a job description that looks good and send that in. The interviews take about 45 minutes. We do them on Zoom. There'll be 20 to 25 minutes of discussion afterwards. That's a very valuable part of the pit crew, is you get feedback right immediately after you're done on what you did well, interviewing for that position that you picked out. And all the interviewers are hiring managers. So we're also very adept, I would say. I'd give us credit for that, at picking out things that you do that might not be helpful, and also then coaching you on what to do to be more effective to tell your story. So you can practice as many times as you like. So that's the practice early, practice often part of it. And it may take you 4 or 5 times till you'll start to feel confident that you can handle most of the questions you're going to receive, and deal with all the different personalities. So interviewer personalities. And so when you come to the pit crew, you are going to get a panel interview. So you'll be exposed to 2 or 3 personalities doing your practice interview. So you can take a look afterwards at the video that you get, and make your own assessment of how you did or how you might improve. And practice early, practice often. I'll say that one more time. The pit crew also, if you want to have a 2-way interview, just send in that information, that resume and your job description that you've picked out. It takes a couple of days to set them up. So include in that email when you're available, plus 2 days and plus 3 business days. Or when you're not available, you could say, I can't do mornings, or, I have to be done by 3 or something like that. But just give us an idea of what your schedule requirements are, and I'll go to work setting up your practice interview. So that's how you do a 2-way interview. If you'd like to do a 1-way interview, the pit crew has an offering that Jeff has arranged for us. And the pit crew's goal with the 1-way interview offering is to just give you a chance to get used to working with the tool, because it's very awkward to do these 1-way interviews. So I give you the questions in advance. There's only 4 of them. When you engage the tool, you'll have 3 minutes to answer each one. And so 12 minutes, you're done. And then you'll get a copy of the video that you can review. Nobody else will see that video. There's no coaching involved with that. Unless you choose to share the video, you'll have it. You can share it if you choose to, but the pit crew will not review it. It'll give you feedback. It's just an opportunity to do what I said there, you to get familiar with using the tool. And you can do it multiple times as well until you reach that state of familiarity. So that's the 1-way video offering from the pit crew. There's my LinkedIn profile. I encourage you to link in with me. I'm growing my network to include mainly people who are in job transition. So please just put in a note that says, you saw me on the interview Wednesday, and that's good enough. If there's no note, I'm not adding you to my network. And of course, I want to know that you're in job transition. So include where we bet. I also use this opportunity to talk about some coaching that I do. I'm a 1-topic coach. And I'm very focused on this, and that's how to answer the question, why did you leave your last job? Or, in general, how to answer questions about previous jobs that you've left. And we'll have a conversation about that on the phone or on Zoom, and we'll figure out how to storyboard your situation, what led up to your leaving the company, how to transition to more positive talk. So it'll be customized for your situation. And it doesn't just have to be one job. It could be a whole series of jobs that you've had that you might struggle to explain how this happened. We can cover all that. I've done this quite a bit, so I feel pretty confident I can help you out. All you have to do is reach out in the usual way to the dallaspitcrew@gmail.com and request a coaching session, and then I'll call you and we'll set up a time to do that. So that's free. Some people say coach and they think money, or hear coach and they think money, but everything the Pit Crew does is absolutely free. It's done by volunteers. If you don't like me as a coach, we'll find you another coach. So reach out to the Pit Crew for help.
Mark, thank you very much. So just as a reminder, we don't, as we said at the beginning, we don't have an actual candidate to be interviewed today. So we're going to go back and watch session 1 of a 13-part workshop that Mark and Walt put together. Today, we'll be talking about preparing to be interviewed, how employment recruiting works, and developing interview tools. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat window. And at the end of the session, we will get those questions answered for you.
Today, preparing to be interviewed and how recruiting works, or the other way to say it is working with recruiters. We'll cover both. I have to say that based on slide count, most of this is going to be discussion about recruiters and how you work with them. But both of these are very important. And I think one of the things that when people are first unemployed, they figure out pretty quickly is that there's a lot of preparation work necessary to be ready to interview well. And so today we're going to talk about what what you can do anytime, any day, any night. You don't have to have a specific job opportunity in mind, but what you can do to get prepared to interview. And then the other part of it is that we added after the first round, I think we added this question about how to work with recruiters. We thought it was important, although it's not directly related to interviewing. It's very important to understand how recruiting works when you're new to the job search. So we put it into session 1 today, and we'll spend a good portion of our time here on that topic. Okay, so here's where we are. We're on session number 1 of 13, as Jeff mentioned, and it's about 20 hours of material that Walt and I put together when we started collecting all the things we thought were important for you to know to be an effective interviewer and have confidence. And so today, as I just mentioned, preparing to be interviewed and recruiting. Next week is preparing for a specific interview and how to prepare if you have limited time. So that happens occasionally where you really don't have as much time as you'd like to interview. So we kind of drill down into what's the most important things. And then we're going to also start talking about networking and so on and so forth up through the 13 sessions. Here's how we think about it. I'm having trouble with my mouse. I have to click it several times to get it to work. So the first 5 sessions are all about preparing to interview. So that's just how important it is. Like 5 out of 13 sessions, we're talking about just preparation. Then the second 5 sessions are all about effective interviewing. So now we get right into the meat of how you become an effective interviewer. And then the last 3 sessions are kind of special topics that build on the first 10. So after you had a chance to listen to the first 10, these last 3 will be much more meaningful to you. And so that takes about 1/4 of a year, right? 3 months to get through all 13 sessions. Okay, we're going to start off with a poll, and that poll is, do you know your Myers-Briggs personality type? And do you know your top 5 Clifton strengths? And if you don't know what either one of these are, or even both of them, then there's an answer for that. Yes to neither one of them. Tried to be positive here. So yes to both, yes to Clifton strengths only, yes to Myers-Briggs only, or yes to neither one of those.
And for those people on Facebook, please just put your question, please put your answer right into the comment field, please. So we'll give it another
15 seconds or so, and Jeff will stop it. All right, let's wrap it up there. And looks like 1/3 of you have neither your Myers-Briggs or your Clifton Strengths. And so, and about 25, 1/4 have Myers-Briggs only, 1/6 or so Clifton Strengths only, and about 1/5 have both. Okay, well, I asked this question because we're curious to know, kind of how much introspection, let's say, that you've done in preparation for your job search. Because one of the very first things that I want to talk about around getting prepared is to spend some time, recognizing who you are, what you like to do, what you found easy to do in your past jobs, what you found difficult to do, things that you're naturally skilled at, things that you may be talented at. And I'll talk a minute about the difference between skills and talents. What kind of environment you thrive in, what kind of boss has been the best boss you've ever had, what kind of boss has been, kind of bad for you. You had challenges, you may not have understood why, but those kinds of things. Because, the opportunity behind being unemployed and searching for work is you have some control over where you end up working next. And if you don't really understand what you're best at and why you're best at it, like some of these assessments will let you know, then it's going to be more of a random walk, and you may random walk right back into a not very successful opportunity. So one of the big kind of themes of all of the stuff that Walt and I talk about is you do things for a purpose, and you want to control your job search and end up at a spot that's good for you. So very first thing, spend some time getting to know yourself. And Myers-Briggs is a personality assessment. There's also a thing called DISC. They're similar, I think. Myers-Briggs is not necessarily focused on work. It's just your personality, how you interact with people, how you process information. It applies in all aspects of your life. Clifton Strengths is business-oriented strengths. So these are things that you do easily and almost perfectly without trying, those kinds of strengths. And you should, once you understand them, there's about 32 of them or something like that. When you take the assessment, you get the top 5, then you can start focusing on where you contribute the most, and it'll help you understand yourself, which is what you want to do. So that's important, and don't skip that step. And here's a question to ponder. I got this from a recruiter who said, when somebody reaches out to me about a job position, actually this wasn't a recruiter, it was a coach, career coach, I'm sorry. The first question they ask is, what is important to you in your next position? Okay, very open-ended question. And it could be money, it could be commute, it could be the environment, the culture, it could be a good boss. I mean, it could, you need to decide for yourself what is important to you in your next position. And then you got to set about, looking for positions, jobs, and companies that you believe will match a large number of what's important to you. Because after all, why take a job where it's not a good match? And you're not going to know it's a good match until you've done some thinking about it. Okay, so enough on that topic. The next thing you need to do is we're not talking about resumes today. Let's assume you polished your resume like you'd like to have it. And so for your resume, because interviewers will take questions right off your resume. We often do this in the pit crew. Okay, it says here that you have extraordinary attention to detail. Give me an example. So you need to have a 20 to 40-second comment for every statement or bullet point on your resume. And maybe I'll say a little bit about resumes. We see resumes all the time with like 15 bullet points, and invariably we'll ask the question, okay, there's 15 bullet points here. What are your top 3? Okay, so having a lot of bullet points is not necessarily a good thing, but if you have a lot of bullet points, you need to have a story, a comment, an example perhaps about every one of them. Okay, and those need to be focused on how you demonstrate value, not what you did necessarily. So here's another kind of mistake that people make is they talk a lot about what they did in their resume, but they don't talk about how they added value. So here's how you think about this. And I'm stealing a little bit of Walt's thunder, so I'm not going to try to do that. But think about this as I've helped my company increase efficiency in the closing process. For example, I helped my last employer improve the closing process from 7 days to 2 days. Okay, so there's how you helped, and there's an example. And then the question that comes is, would you like to hear how I did that? Okay, something like that. So go through your resume and think about everything in your resume and say, here's how it helped. Here's a brief example without any details, just what the result was. Okay, not how you did it, not what you did, not who was involved in doing it, just what the result was. And then kind of a follow-up question. This is called challenge response type of approach. And we'll get into that later on in the sessions. But in terms of getting prepared, this is how you need to start thinking. And some people really have to bend their minds around, it's not so important what you did, it's how it helped. It's how it helped. And so you might have to do some thinking to remember exactly how what you did helped. Star stories. Okay, telling stories are very important. It's a much more effective way to communicate your value if you use a structured story. And so STAR stands for an acronym: situation, task, action, result. We're going to spend a whole session on it coming up. The whole session is going to be on STAR stories, but in general, using a structure to tell your stories and including, important pieces and parts like the situation, the task, the action, and the result, making sure you cover the whole story generates a much more memorable situation. So people will likely remember what the result was after you told it in this kind of structure. And some people tell me, I'm not really a good storyteller. I don't like telling stories. They don't work for me. And I say this is just a structured way to tell the story. You don't have to be glib. You don't have to have storytelling timing. Just use the format and it'll be much, more effective in getting your point across. Okay. I put a note down here for common behavioral interview questions. I'm going to give you some examples here, I think in the next slide, of what kind of questions to expect. You want to also have certain achievements that you've done that you can focus the interviewer's mind on by asking a question. And of course, we have a whole session just on asking questions as well, because that's a very effective way to make a connection with the interviewer and to have some control over how the interview goes, what kind of things are discussed. But I'm planting a seed now in your mind as you prepare in general about what are some of your greatest achievements that you would like to work into an interview, stories that you'd like to be sure that you get a chance to tell, demonstrate what you do well, what environment you thrive in, your successes. And you might have a handful of those if you've had a long career, but the point is you have several to draw upon. And then also don't forget to prepare a portfolio of work product, okay? Candidates do really well in the pit crew when candidates bring their work product. Their whole demeanor changes when they start to talk about their own work product. And if you're in a creative industry, you're used to having a portfolio that shows off what you've done in the past. But even, more technically oriented work, you have a report or a presentation you did, that can serve as work product. And, you can pull it out and say, here's an example of something that I did. You probably don't want to leave it behind necessarily. And you don't want to present anything that's confidential. And maybe if you haven't done this, next time you have to leave a company, you may ask them if you can take certain materials with you to use as examples of your work. And this is, you know, in all my years, I've heard of one person who actually did this, had the forethought, and, you know, we're given permission to use some material that might have otherwise been considered confidential. Now, if you don't have any work product at all, you know, I suggest that a cover letter for a particular opportunity is a good work product, and we'll talk about that more next week, because that's starting to focus in on a specific job opportunity. But generally, as you generally prepare to interview, think about different work product that might be applicable to what you're looking for, and don't be afraid to use it. Get it out, polish it up, you know, refresh your mind about what it is. Okay, here we go. Be prepared for questions. Okay, here's the type of questions you need to be prepared for. Questions about the tools you've used. Tools are very important today, especially computer-based tools. Okay, so most companies are going to be very curious about the kinds of tools you have experience with. You might be prepared for questions about how long it took you to learn that tool. How much of an expert do you consider yourself to be in that particular tool? Also, any processes you run. Processes might be like Agile or Waterfall, which is used for software development. Agile is used for lots of different things. Maybe accounting processes, you know, processes that you use in your industry. The skills that you have, the abilities, the knowledge. Now, a lot of knowledge, for instance, can be can expire. You know, knowing how to use VisiCalc is completely worthless today. You know, you need to know how to use Excel. So that's knowledge that's expired. But you know, your skills and some of your abilities, the things that you achieved, you know, in the day with those modern tools at the time, are never expire. I mean, those are good stories. They can be used as long as they're relevant, you know, to the job at hand. But they don't age out. Achievements and your expertise. I mentioned expertise already. I wanted to mention one thing. We don't talk about talents and skills until we get to session 12. But talent, skills, and strengths and talents. We don't talk about strengths and talents until we get to session 12. But let me just tell you the difference. I had to print it out here so I could remember to say it right. So a strength is near perfect performance while doing an activity, often without thinking about it. Okay, this means you can do something without giving it a lot of conscious thought. And the example for me is I can make a schedule. I can plan. I mean, I'm just a natural at it. I don't know. I find it not difficult at all to, on the fly, build a schedule, make a plan. And that was good because that's what I did for a living. But I had people who worked on my teams who, you know, they couldn't figure out how to get started. I mean, they just couldn't figure out how to start a plan. And then they got all worried about what order they had to put things in, and it just locked them up. So I could do that without thinking about it at all. Now, a talent is a naturally occurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior. So a talent is really something that's innate to you, and it may or may not be beneficial in the job market. Okay, so I had an uncle who could play the piano by, you know, he never had any training. You could just ask him to play a song and he could play the piano. Well, for a musician, that's a great talent, but, you know, for an accountant, you know, it's nice to know that you play the piano, but it doesn't help your job performance. Okay, so that's a talent. Oops, where's my star? Okay, there it is. I see it now. So we have a little star down in the corner to indicate where we're going to transition slides. So does anyone have any questions about this that I just covered? Do I see anything there? Come on. All right.
But what we don't know is, has the star just finished speaking or is the star about to speak?
Well, there was two questions. Do you have a link for Myers-Briggs or the DISC personality assessment? You can just Google those. That's the best way to do that. And then Barbara asked, is there a free recommended website for Clifton No, there's no free access. You do have to pay. You really only have to get your top 5, and it's like $19 or $15 or something. If you buy, you can buy the book on Amazon and get the coupon, and it's less than 20 bucks. So it's definitely worth having, but there's no free access to any of those 3.
Yes, the star is split, Tommy.
Before I get started, 2 things. One is I got to dump my Lotus 123 application. I think that's no longer in use. And secondly, you're talking about how some people lay out these rows of items at the top of their resume with our qualifications and things like that. And I also love to ask the question, of the 12 that they listed, which was the one I did yesterday, which 3 are the most important? And the first one mentioned was not even on the list. So when we talk about having a resume, we also mean knowing your resume and what's in it as well. And if you have top 3 skills, are they listed on the left, the first 3 on your left, if you have 3, 3, and 3 or something like that. Anyway, just brought that kind of comment up. Having one is not nearly as effective as knowing everything in it as well. So what do we got to do prior to the interview? Lots of things, really. And so we're kind of hitting the highlights today of some things that give you the biggest bang for the buck. And if you do these, you're pretty well set for going forward. Of course, there's a lot of other fine tuning and things that you can do as well. So the first thing it is, since we are selling, what is your value add? What's your unique selling proposition? Jack Beck uses that term. If you know Jack Beck, he's a career coach in the DFW area. And he calls it, do you have your USP? What is it that you can say that's unique about you? Or basically, what's my value add? And I can say I help build skills and confidence for successful job interviews. And I could back that up with, for example, I've coached over 1,000 people in the last several years in helping them improve their interviewing skills. So something like that to get the ball rolling. If you don't know how to speak that quickly and clearly and concisely, that's something you should work on to say, all right, what is it that I really do? And it doesn't start with, I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, I'm a project manager. That's kind of what you do. What is it that you sell? How do you help? What is it you can, so you put those in there, and it's only about 7 words, something like that. Of course, we want to have some references. So you need to do some due diligence on your references. Now, the basic question you ask a potential reference is, what would you say about me if someone asked you? What information would you give? I use it as a question to determine whether they're going to be a reference or not, because I may not like what they're going to say. And also, I can help references and say, here's some things that you know about me that I would like you to emphasize, and I can help them with telling them what I want them to say. So we would like to have those references, know what they're going to say, help them with that information. So we've got it all prepared, all ready to go. Suggest not listed on the resume. That reference is available upon request. It's about 20 years old. We don't want to say that anymore. They know that. And then your resume. And I've already talked about your resume and knowing your resume. I really suggest you have a biography done. A biography is going to help you in your search process. It doesn't help necessarily with a specific interview for hiring, but it certainly helps you connecting with people and giving them information about you that they can then take and represent to others that doesn't say I'm looking for a job. So it's important to have, I think, a biography these days. Very one page, you can put a picture on that and just list some things it's got some things similar to an interview that's on it, but at the same time, it just says, hey, instead of just going to somebody and say, look, throwing a resume on a desk and say, here's something, someone you might want to talk to, might give them a biography or give them a few points in an email and say, hey, when you introduce me to somebody, here's some things that I would like you to include. Help people help you. That is the real key. Make it easy for people to help, okay? Your LinkedIn profile. Everybody's going to go look at LinkedIn profile today very, very quickly. So we want to get something up, work on your resume, work on your LinkedIn profile and get that ready, because if it is not looking good on your LinkedIn profile, you'll easily be dismissed. And so it's very, very critical today that tool is used effectively. You should start doing your prioritization on target companies. Start looking at potential companies that you want to work for. So you need a list of target companies that you would like to work for, because when you get into the interview, you will have ideas about how you can handle and what they're looking for, all that sort of thing, through informational interviews or research on the web. Yeah, this is the company. This is why I like the company. And when you look at why I like the company, it also tells them that you've done your research and it is a match for you, because you say, I like these things about the company, which is a nice culture fit or an organization fit or experience fit or I help fit. Your attributes, achievements, inventory, and your star stories. Extremely important to have those in the beginning. So I have a library of star stories that are relevant to the type of job that I'm looking for. It starts with an achievements list. Don't you wish you had all your achievements of the last multiple years of your experience handy, or you wouldn't have to go back and think about them and remember them and figure them out. It takes some work to do that if you haven't had them. I had all of that handy when I left my last job. Of course, my company wiped my computer clean and they wiped that file out as well. So I had every reason for every raise I've ever had. I've had all my recognition and achievements and stuff done, all listed for 25 years. And then I lost all. Fortunately, I retired, so I don't have to use it anymore. But I had all that information. So as you go forward, start keeping track of that. Build your star stories as you go forward. And of course, practicing. I don't know anyone who disagrees with the fact that when you practice, you get better. Yes, it'll get better. Well, I don't like to practice. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like making mistakes and doing things wrong in front of people. Well, that's okay. Who does? So what we do is we put our learning hat on. So, okay, I'm just learning how to improve. This is just going to help me. In fact, when you go to the pit crew and you come to the workshop, we're on your side. We're trying to help you get better. We're not here to tear you down. We're not here to make you look bad. We're just trying to say, consider these things, look at these options, look at some other ways of doing some things that you could be more effective in your interviews. So put that learning hat on and let that outweigh your concern and anxiety about doing the interview. I mean, you're going to have it for real, right? So why don't you practice it when it's not for real, so that when it is for real, it's not so bad. All right. Preparing for an interview, and I do, I help. So I take my resume and I take every item in my resume and put a line on it. So 7 strengths has 7 lines. And so, for example, I picked out some strengths. And so, all right, so what is that? Visionary leader. Well, tell me about being a visionary leader. Well, what did I do? What was my experience with it? So I looked at critical process and content components. I leveraged matrix and knowledge management, increasing the win rate. So what's the value add? Well, I gave rapid response and resolution by the help desk. And just as an example, increased revenue, 164,000. And what's my star story? Well, for a particular university, here's what I did. So I can take that kind of information and say, all right, with that thing, is there a star story associated with it? The nice thing about star stories is that they can be used for multiple elements of you as your experience and your soft skills and your I help. So you've got an I help, but that story may demonstrate collaboration. It may demonstrate leadership. It may demonstrate attention to detail. It may, those kinds of things that are important in the job you do can be demonstrated as well through the star story, not just the result. It's more than just the result. So I can talk about star stories for a long time. They're extremely powerful. There's only about 10 or 11 reasons why star stories are really all that good. Mark's already hit a few of them, but you will be remembered because a star story connects emotionally with your interviewer and it's memorable. People can remember the stories easier than they can remember the whole interview. So that's one way of going about taking a look at, all right, here's what my resume says. Here's how I can break it down and have star stories and be able to articulate all the items that are in my resume. So we're going to stop there on the preparation part. Any other questions that haven't been asked? One person said, when would you use a biography? Informational interviewing, I think, is the first answer that I would give. If I am trying to find out information from another person, that's the meeting. I have my questions in advance that I want to ask. but generally it will turn back to and say, well, tell me about you. What are you looking for? What are you doing? It can morph into an interview even, but they'll ask something. You say, well, I'm interested in this kind of role, this kind of job. Would you know of anyone else who I should talk to in the company? Well, yeah, well, you might want to talk to Fred. He's over in accounting. All right, so great. Would you mind calling Fred and asking him if he'd take my call or would like to see me? Yes or no, whatever. He says, well, here's a bio that you can give Fred that kind of gives the background and elements of me, of myself. So there's a something that says it's not a resume. Tell Fred I'm looking for a job. So that would be the difference. So another questions? Anything else?
Just a reminder, we're watching a recording. We'll
Any
get
other questions?
Questions in the chat box at
Let's
the
move
end
on
of the
then
session.
to our second topic, which is working with recruiters. And so I'm going to cover why recruiters behave the way they do, basically.
Hi, excuse me. I'm sorry, Walt, I tried to type in a little faster, but I did have one question about the bio. This is Barbara Lockley. My question is, do you recommend a photo on the bio sheet?
If that question directed to me, the answer is yes. And as professional,
The answer is yes.
you don't hear me?
There's pros and cons, but most of the pros are yes. The main thing is it's got to make it a good picture of you, okay? Get probably a professional picture. If it's on the top left of the page, then you're looking into the page. You're looking to the right as the viewer sees you. If your photo's on the top right, then you want to be still looking into the page and you be looking to your right. So that would be the main things about a photo. But yeah, it's okay. Now, a resume, I would not put a photo on a resume.
And I just put in the chat box for those people who want it. You can download a sample bio that we use on our Thursday effective resume class. So
Thank you.
there's a sample bio there. I'll put a link in the chat there's a great book all about bios written by Minna Brown and Paul Asinoff called Be Sharp. And the second half of the book is all about the one-page bio. So I'll put that link in the chat in just a couple minutes.
All right.
Mute yourself.
Oops, sorry, Mark, I muted you. I meant to mute myself.
Well, now I can't tell if I'm muted or not. I think you guys can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm going to talk about the recruiting business. My primary motivation here is to help you understand why recruiters do what they do, why they behave the way they behave. And then Walt's going to go into, working with, how do you, questions you want to ask them and some more about actually working with them. And my motivation is, I think you'll, once you understand their business model and the different kinds of recruiters you may encounter, it'll be clearer to you why, funny things happen during your search process. Like, for instance, you get a call from a recruiter, and after they verify that it's you, they want to know what your salary requirements are, okay, without ever even talking about the job. So that I'll explain that, but let's go over some statistics here. There we go. 70 to 85% of jobs are not posted. Okay, so when we talk about networking, I talk a little more about why this is. Some people doubt this. I'm pretty convinced that 75% or so, let's just use a round number, which says that 3 out of 4 jobs are not posted. 3 out of 4 jobs are not posted, 75%. And briefly, a lot of that, I think, has to do with strategic planning. So our company does a plan for the year, and they decide that they're going to hire some people in the first quarter, and some in the second, some in the third, some in the fourth. And of course, each quarter they'll make sure they're still on plan. But when the January starts, they have plans to hire 20 people, but not 20 people tomorrow. Maybe 5 in the first quarter, and so on and so forth. Now, if someone comes along who's a really good match, they may say, well, we really got to get that person, and that this job that we're filling in January, there's a better one that we're going to have in June, and they'll just advance that position in time. Okay, so it's never been posted, it's on somebody's plan somewhere, and so that's the hidden job market. We just had a candidate announce their landing at Frisco Connect yesterday, and they applied for a part-time role, 6 week, a 6 week kind of temporary thing. The company was so impressed with their credentials, they made it a full-time role. So there's a full-time job that didn't exist until the interview happened, and so maybe you count that as part of the hidden job market as well. So of the 100 or so, let's take, I'm going to show some numbers here. If you have 100 jobs, okay, as I define jobs, the hidden jobs, and the visible portion of that 400 is 100 jobs, okay? So 100 jobs have been posted, and maybe that's this quarter's worth. How are those jobs filled? About 40% of them are filled through corporate recruiters. So these are the recruiters who work for the company that's doing the hiring. And so they do that, those primarily through their first and second level connections. And these are first and second level connections in the LinkedIn sense. So first level connections are people they have talked to or maybe exchanged emails with, somebody they're familiar with directly. And then second level connections would be a employee referral. So somebody who refers, somebody inside the company makes a referral to HR that says, I think this person would be good for this job. The proverbial walking the resume in, okay? So 40% of the job. So out of the 100 posted jobs, 40 would be filled by corporate recruiters. About another 10% are also filled by corporate recruiters, but this 10%, they're doing it through their ATS or through public job boards, but they're not relying on referrals or their own connections. They're actually going into a database and searching for people who are a good match. And so those two together indicate that about 50% of those 100 jobs that were posted are filled by corporate recruiters. So they play a very big role. About 20% are filled by outside recruiters. These are called agency or outside recruiters. And so they don't work for the company. They're hired by the company to find people. And so they use similar techniques, and they'll have their own connections. They'll have their own database of people they've talked to in the past. And sometimes they just, do it the old fashioned way and go search on Monster or LinkedIn and start making calls to people. But about 20% of posted jobs are filled by agency recruiters. And then that doesn't add up to 100% yet. The interesting thing, and if you've been in the job search for a while, you'll shake your head yes at this number. About 30% of posted jobs are filled by internal candidates. Okay, part of this is that most big companies have corporate governance that says you need to find the best candidates available, and those people aren't always in. You can't always assume those people are inside your company, although it turns out to be often they are. So they'll do a search, a global search, a public search, and then decide among the candidates. But oftentimes those go to the internal candidates. So if you look at that, and here's the numbers. So if you look at that, if you take out that 30%, okay, because they went internally anyway, this says about 2/3 of the available jobs, which is 70 out of 100 are available to people outside the company. About 2/3 are filled by internal recruiters and 1/3 filled by external recruiters. Okay, so that's the kind of volume of work that recruiters do. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the different kinds of recruiters you're going to encounter, and I've already talked about corporate and agency recruiters. Corporate recruiters rely on first and second level connections. And by the way, down in the bottom right hand corner, you'll see my source for this information, Lionel De Leon. He speaks regularly at Frisco Connect, regularly meaning maybe a couple of times a year. So if you get a chance to hear him directly, he's a recruiter here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I think he focuses on IT people. But he's the one who that I heard him speak, and this information seemed really relevant and interesting and concise to me. So I'm sharing it with you. So corporate recruiters rely primarily, as I just gave you the numbers, on their first and second level connections. Okay. Resumes, though, and keywords are still important because they do pull about 20% of their personal production through the applicant tracking system screens or through public job boards. And Andy Cook spoke yesterday at Frisco Connect, and she's a recruiter. She said, when I get a resume, somebody brings me a resume and says, I think this is a good candidate. First thing she does is she does Control F on the document, which is Control Find, and she starts typing in keywords to see if they're actually on the resume. Okay, so even when it hits the recruiter's desk, having the right keywords are important, whether it came through a referral or through one of their own ATS screens. When you get a chance, so let's say you get a referral, they give you a call, you need to be prepared by doing your research. They're going to give you a mini interview right on the spot, the so-called screening interview, to verify the information on your resume and get some insight into your personality. So be prepared for that interview to pop right up. And it's important that you come in through a first and second level connection, because most of the jobs they fill come through that way. And so that can come through employees. It can also come through the recruiter that's responsible for that position, okay, or the recruiting leader. So if you think you're a good match and you've got some, you could back that up, but you don't have any connections inside the company, then try to reach out to the recruiter who has that posting. And if you can't find out who that is, reach out to recruiting management. You just call the company and say, I'd like to talk to your, the person who leads your recruiting effort. And then just, give them a pitch. Give them your pitch of why you're a good match to whatever role they're trying to fill. And big advantages to coming in that way. Okay, now third-party agency, outside, third-party contingency recruiters, you'll see them called all four of those names. They are hired by the companies to find people. And when I was doing it in my last job, we would spend a couple of 3 weeks using our own efforts, our own referrals, our own database, and searching on some of the tools that weren't too expensive to find people. And if we were unsuccessful, then we would turn it over to an agency recruiter. And so agency recruiters are amazingly unsuccessful, which this was news to me, but they work really hard and they only place about 1 out of 5 candidates that they present. They place a premium, therefore, they place a premium on the most placeable candidates. Okay, that's the candidates with the most in demand or the most valuable placements. And, not to be too crass about it, these are the placements that are going to get them the most money. Okay, so that is their priority. Being top of mind, so making regular contact, being respectful, being grateful, being thankful, improves your success with external recruiters. They are very concerned about their reputation with their clients, okay, because there's a lot of external recruiters out there, and companies will sometimes work exclusively with one, or more often they just kind of spread it around. So the better job you do, the more comes your way, the more opportunities you get. So they want to present only well-qualified candidates, and they will interview you as well to get an assessment of how well you would do when you interview with the company. So that's how they work. Well-qualified and prepared candidates. As a matter of fact, sometimes they have their own version of the job description, because they'll spend time up front to figure out exactly what is going to get them paid. Okay, what kind of candidate they have to produce to get a payday. and they can share that information with you. The third type is a retained, also sometimes called an executive recruiter. They do not typically work with unemployed people. Okay, they actually don't necessarily accept referrals. They find people. Okay, and a lot of times these searches are confidential. So there's another part of the hidden job market. They're not posted at all. They go out and find the candidates, and oftentimes they do that through networking. You may have gotten a call from one who says, do you know anybody who has this kind of experience that I'm looking for? Good chance that's a retained search and not a posted job. And they may tell you it's a confidential search. Okay, there you go. Now you know it's not posted. Now, good candidates who reach out to them, you can reach out to these people and they may say, they'll probably refer you to another agency, or they may, some of the bigger, like I think Korn Ferry has kind of their own, their top is retained executive search, but they also have some agency work, and so they may refer you to their agency portion of the organization. And as I mentioned, they're not particularly interested in working with unemployed candidates. So those will be referred as well. Now, besides those different types, that's an organizational structure, right, that I just talked about. You have different personalities, and sometimes, and they go with their different styles of agency. So you're going to meet some rookie, let's call them rookie recruiter personas. Okay, they're very busy. They work with easy hires. These might be regular hires. They may be hourly workers. Fast and furious, and they're concerned about efficiency. Okay, so they want to get the job closed as quickly as possible, and oftentimes this may be contract work, and so it's just the first acceptable candidate is good enough. Doesn't have to be a perfect match. The first acceptable candidate is good enough. And yesterday, Andy Cook talked about managed, what did you call it? Managed staffing model, which is the first time I've heard of this, but it's a thing. And I'm surprised. I've come across this myself personally. Very big companies like Verizon will use this managed staffing model. And so they'll release a job description to multiple agencies. Okay. And so each agency, and her example she gave, each agency got to submit 2 candidates. So let's say they release it to 10 agencies. Each agency only gets 2 candidates to submit. So there you go, 20 people. They're going to get 20 people to consider, and they're going to hire one of them, right? So this is why you'll get multiple calls from multiple recruiters for the same position. Okay, they're all in a big hurry to get their candidate submitted and have one of them selected. And and I'm surprised, but Verizon's a pretty big company, and they do this as well. So big companies do this. Kind of just throw it out to the wolves, so to speak, and see what they can beat out of the bushes. The talker, and you may have encountered some of these. I don't know that I encountered them too much, but I have encountered them. They use their persuasion skills to motivate people, including their clients. They want to motivate you to do your best, and they want their clients to select their candidates. They will tell you exactly what to say. Okay, and they will tell you exactly what you need to put on your resume. Now, this causes a little conflict with me, and maybe to you as well, until you consider that this is who you're dealing with. They may say, you need to have on your resume, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now they're not telling you to lie. They're telling you, if you can't put this on your resume, if it's not true, then I can't help you. Okay, so they know exactly what they need to have on the resume to attract the attention of their client, and they will tell you. Okay, and but if you can't do it, they mean don't do it. I mean, if it's not true, it's not true. Don't do it. But don't be upset at them. I mean, they're just telling you what it's going to take for them to place somebody, and it may not be you. Okay, it may not be you. So that's the talker. The tailor, these are the kinds you want. Really, they like to collaborate. They're kind of believe it's not quantity, it's quality. Where the rookie is much more interested in quantity. They still are looking for a high match, a high level match, because their clients are going to be disappointed if they don't. They often have an intake document that describes exactly what that match needs to be, and it may be slightly different than the published job description. They will help you tailor your resume. They really are, what they say, and not tell you what you have to have on your resume, but help you tailor it to be the most effective. They will also can coach you on interviewing. They will do that as well. They'll invest some time in you, is basically how that works. And so it's a relationship. They're building a relationship with you. I was lucky enough to meet one and be placed by one of these types of people in the early 90s. And we had a relationship for like 20 years after that. He helped me and I helped him by doing hiring through him as well. But he helped me in the early 90s. He did exactly what I just talked about here. He helped me with my resume. He coached me on how to interview well with the target company that we were going after, because he had placed a lot of candidates there and he understood what they were looking for and what their kind of trigger capabilities were. So you have to work to build a relationship with these types of people as well, and expect, if you're successful, that it'll last. It will be a relationship. It'll be a beneficial relationship for years and years and years. DataBots, can't get away from DataBots. This is the ATS screening system, although they're getting a little smarter now. And Andy Cook called this cloud matching, where some compute resources on the cloud match your keywords. And now it's getting to be more like key phrases, more than just keywords, to what has been loaded into the system as a profile for a top candidate for this kind of work. So, and when you're dealing with the data bot, and this is generally good, strong quantitative data will do well with the data bot. So they're looking for numbers and contribution, not just general statements. Okay, a little bit about how they're paid. And corporate recruiters are paid a salary and a bonus. So they get a bonus for every job they land, but mostly it's salary. They're interested in hiring people who are going to stay, right? Because their longevity of their hires is important to the company. They have quotas and deadlines like everybody else, and if they're not effective, then they will, not get to keep doing recruiting. They'll find somebody else. Okay, so there's in general, a lot of production pressure on recruiters. Agency recruiters make more in commission than they do in base salary. So the better they do, they see it right in their paycheck immediately. There's an extremely high turnover in this role, so a lot of people try it and find that they're not that good at it, or they're not good enough to make enough to live on. They have different contractual relationships. I alluded to this. Sometimes they just get one placement. Sometimes they may, for instance, we've got this plan to hire 20 people next year. I'm going to give you 10 now. Okay, 5 in the first quarter, 5 in the second quarter, and so you're going to get 10. It's kind of a contract we have with them, and so the recruiter knows, they have a little runway, and they're going to get 10 placements out of this engagement, so they're a little more invested in doing a good job for the company as opposed to just one and done. But that could be the case as well. So there's really a wide variety in how good agency recruiters are. And Walt's going to give you some questions to ask them to find out how strong their relationship is with the target company. But the other thing you'll see is that you may apply for a job and you get contacted by a recruiter. A couple of months later, a different recruiter contacts you for the same job. Okay, well, they've changed horses. The company has changed horses. So don't let that confuse you as well. There's quite a lot, and especially in outside recruiters, there's a lot of turnover, but inside with the individual recruiters and with the agencies that are engaged with companies. So companies spread this around so they keep the cost down. They generate some competition between the agency recruiters and therefore get the best price. Okay. Retained recruiters are paid by the company. They often get paid in advance, at least a portion of it, and then they get the final amount after they placed a candidate, but it's a completely different model. And that's how they get paid. So they'll reach out to you if they believe you're a good candidate. All right, I want to speed through this because, and you guys do search for this on LinkedIn down at the bottom, working with a recruiter to get a good job, a beginner's guide. So this is directly out of that document. And I've talked about all of these things, the advantages of working with a recruiter who's a tailor, but they can really help you out. And, you know, if you find one, then, you know, nurture that relationship and it'll benefit you for the rest of your career. So some of the things, they can keep your search confidential if you're doing a confidential search, if you have a current employee. They can provide recommendations and references for you when they present you. So they may get to know you. They've seen a lot of other candidates. They can say, you know, out of the 15 candidates I've considered, this is the top one that I wanted to present. So they come along with their own perspective, which a lot of companies will value. They can tell you about unposted opportunities. So if they got this contract for 10 positions over 6 months, they can tell you, they may give you some insight that these positions are coming up. They may not be able to exactly share the timing, but they know that they exist, you know, in somebody's mind and somebody's plan. So there's a couple of 3 ways. They can give you feedback. They can help you differentiate opportunities. They can offer nuanced market insight and salary ranges for specific roles. So if things are trending hot and people are getting at the high end of the range, they can kind of share that information with you. Now, don't ever forget, and Walt will point this out, that they actually work for the client. But, you know, if you're going to walk from the job because the salary is no good, they may give you some insight that, you know, they're going to go to the top end of this range because they really need help. They can give you honest feedback on your expectations as you'd expect from somebody you build a relationship with. As I said, they can help you practice. They can help you negotiate. They have sometimes very large networks as well, especially some of the national chains. And ongoing advice and support for the rest of your career, as I mentioned. All right, let's go on to Walt. Do we have any questions while Walt's getting ready? Oh, there you go.
My toolbar disappeared.
Yeah.
I was looking for all the controls. and they when you share screen or don't unshare screen, things change, things move around. So I was having fun hunting for the tools. All right. So okay. A little bit different perspective on recruiters. One of the things we can do here is put yourself as a recruiter. All right. So now you're a recruiter, you know, how do you operate and how do you work? So Mark covered some very excellent materials on types and personas and those kinds of things that'll help us understand them. And then the better we understand them, the easier it is for us to figure out how to work with them effectively. So there's a couple of things we want to remember. Number one is recruiters do not look for a job. They do not. I can remember, I think it was the South Lake Focus Group. Anyway, Frisco Connected, they have this, you know, Jeff participates on this quarterly or a periodic basis of having recruiters and people come in and speak about different topics on job search. And Gail, who was one of them, stated that she got a thank you note from somebody and was immediately, the topic was thank you notes and how impressed she was to get a thank you note because recruiters rarely get them. And she said, oh, we got to find this person a job. I mean, like, that's not what we do normally. So now we're going to do something out of the ordinary because we got a thank you note. So they're really not going to look for a job for us. So it's kind of an obvious thing, but sometimes we got to stop and think that, you know, we give them our stuff, we give them our resume, then they're going to go out and find a position. No, it works the other way around. And you know, we have to toe the line on everything. They don't. Hiring managers don't. Job descriptions don't have to nearly meet the requirements that resumes have to meet. So recruiters are the same thing. If you make a small error or something on your resume, then it's okay, we're going to throw you out because you're not an effective communicator. We can't have that. Now, that can be very, very true if you're going to work for a lawyer or work for a legal area, because they are very detailed on their communications and everything has to be really tight and really excellently done. So that's all appropriate. But a lot of times they throw you out for just reasons that just don't really matter. Now, there's another thing, and I know Mark was talking about this managed stuff and having they go out to different recruiters. But I would imagine that a company that uses different will not take the same candidate from two different agencies, because then there's a squabble over who's going to get paid. You know, that's my candidate. Well, no, that's my candidate. And so, well, they have to pay both, whatever. So, but sometimes if you sign with a lot of recruiters, that may be to your disadvantage, because then several might want to claim you. And it doesn't matter how you get hired. If their contract generally states they get paid. And so that can be a problem. So be careful. Don't just sign up with anybody. Well, true, they put the company interests first, but they're really they work for themselves. They're really like a contract worker. They're not working for the company. They're not working for us. They're really working for themselves, and they're trying to match the two. And some recruiters may not know a thing about the job, may have no knowledge whatsoever. There are those that say, look, I've got a list of 10 questions. I need to get the answers, and then I'm going to pass them on to somebody else to make a decision whether to go to the next step or not. They're just information gatherers. Now, they'd like to tell us some things, but they can't. And here's a list of some of those things they would like to tell us. You know, if you'd have negotiated, you could have gotten a higher salary. Oh, but we're afraid to negotiate. Sometimes it's just a simple matter of saying, is this offer negotiable? Right. Now, when you ask a recruiter as opposed to the hiring manager, there's less fear and less anxiety over losing out because you might negotiate a different offer. But asking a recruiter if it's negotiable is less risky question. But I would still ask it to anyone. But anyway, ask a recruiter. So if we'd have just negotiated, too late. Yeah, I'm listening to you and all that stuff, but I'm not going to present you because you made a bad impression. And I'm not going to tell you right now why. I'm just going to say I'm going to put you in the job hopper and we'll get back to you. And what's the number one complaint that we hear about recruiters? Would you agree that it's, I don't ever get a call back. They don't ever contact me, right? So let's think a minute about why they don't do that. They get paid on hiring people. They don't get paid on calling up all the candidates that didn't make it and say you didn't make it, all right? So at best, you'll get a template that says something along the lines of we selected another candidate, but it's almost always a better qualified candidate, which can be many, many different things. One is it was the boss's daughter, and so that's why we hired her. They're better qualified. So it goes all over the map. Our references weren't very flattering. They did some research on us, and they found out some things that doesn't really sound good about us. Let's take your Facebook page. If you got a picture on there, you're having a good time at the beach drinking beer, that's not a nice hiring presentation of yourself. So there's things out there that say, that doesn't look good. We don't want that impression. Oh, we're going to do this job to an in-house employee. We're just going through the motions. We know we're going to give it, but the law requires us to. It's a part of our diversity effort to make sure that we include all different ethnics and different races, religion, all that kind of stuff in our search, so that we can show that we are following those guidelines, and they do it in process only. So social media posts, I kind of mentioned that along with on your back channel. We're inconsistent. So what we put on our resume, LinkedIn, and social media regarding job search materials is not consistent. It's very important that we keep those consistent. And the team is dragging their feet, waiting on another candidate's response. So they haven't told us because they wish they would get another deal confirmed. They're waiting on getting that deal confirmed. And so it just drags out. So here's the bottom line on the recruiting process in general. Everything outdoes the hiring process. Everything else is more important. What's called the tyranny of the urgent. I have to focus on getting through the day and solving today's crisis and problems and issues and concerns, those kinds of things. And I just don't have the time to hire people, which is kind of wrong, because if you hired people, you wouldn't be so busy putting out the fires, because the people you hired would be out there preventing those fires, right? But anyway, very, very slow to respond, the whole process. And our calendar is urgent, and their calendar, they talk like they're urgent, but they're not. Now they're urgent when they give you the offer, right? They say, okay, you got 24 hours to respond. Yeah, you took 6 months in this process to get to this point. Now you give me 24 hours. And remember this, they're not very helpful to people who fit these criteria. If you're switching careers, you don't have that much experience, your work history is kind of spotty, you don't really meet all the must-have, the required section. Sometimes there's a required section in a job description, and then there's a preferred section. You don't meet all the required. Or if you're looking, talking to a recruiter candidates are looking for roles or industries to fill which the recruiter doesn't work. So we got to find out which field a recruiter works in and who they place people with and what kind of jobs they work. For those of us that are looking for changing jobs and changing industries, there is a session coming up down the road on doing that. Bottom line is it means more work for us to be able to accomplish and do that. Can be done, and we got some good tips and techniques on how that has to be done so that you can do that effectively, but that's coming up later. So how do we really find the right recruiter? I mean, they call us sometimes, we don't know anything about them. Well, can you articulate clearly what your career path is and what experience you have in the field that you're pursuing? All right. So we have to be able to do that in order to find this right recruiter. Now, most of them specialize, and I'm talking about agencies, even the in-house, the corporate recruiter fit this criteria as well. It's a geographic location, job title, and industries. So some recruiting agencies only focus on these types of jobs and these types of industries. They don't do other types of jobs. They don't do just anything and everything. So we want to ensure that they specialize in what we do before we start working with them, all right? It's not to our advantage to spend time with people who don't know exactly how to help us well. So what organizations work with the companies that appeal to us? There are some organizations that regularly work with a specific company or companies to help them with their recruiting needs. They're not retained, maybe. There still can be corporate agency recruiters, but nonetheless, they still are trying to continually have a base. They'd love to have repeat business with a particular customer. And if they're successful in placing people, then they can come back. So if we can find a recruiter, so what companies do you typically work with, or who do you work with? So let's find out from other people. So there's a lot of job seekers out here. Everybody's online today that's a participant in this, except for Mark and Jeff and myself are looking for jobs. And so what do other people find? So you know somebody else who's looking for a job similar to you. Have they used a recruiter? Have they used a different agency? Or just anyone who's not necessarily looking for the same type of job, but you've dealt with the recruiters. Maybe you can find an agency that works in your particular field, your particular job as well. It's a different recruiter, different role, that sort of thing. Tony Bashira speaks a lot of times, and he owns a recruiting business here. Jeff has a very strong relationship with Tony. Tony's almost recognized nationwide. He speaks on ABC, and he's interviewed. He's around. He knows a lot of stuff. He's written a couple of books, all that sort of thing. But he only deals with specific types of jobs. But he might be a good person to connect with and talk to. Online reviews can also be revealing. But every time I look at an online review, they're either good or bad. I mean, there are people who have the good stuff, and then there's people who have the bad stuff. That doesn't mean a company's bad, and doesn't mean a company's good. It means the experience with that particular individual or whatever they did was good or bad. That doesn't make the whole company good or bad. So kind of have to take some of those with a grain of salt. And do they have knowledge of the company, the industry, the hiring manager? The more knowledge they have about those three factors and other similar factors, the better off they are in helping us meet what we're looking for as well. So if they meet, if yes, the kind of company, that's the company I'm looking for, that's in the right industry, and you know the hiring manager, and you know their processes, you know their, that's great. I like knowing that. That's going to be a really a definite plus to working with that kind of recruiter. So check their website, check social media, ask questions, see if they understand their practice area. So I'm just going to get into some questions. So what kind of questions can we ask? So a recruiter calls us, all right? How do we respond? So I'm going to time out here for a second. I'm going to give you some slides here that I think that you ought to have in your job search notebook, okay? This is a notebook that has tabs on it, and it says blind recruiter call, all right? You're going to pull that tab up, and here's this list of questions that you have prepared to ask a recruiter when they call from nowhere, all right? Then there's other times you're going to say, okay, maybe it's your closing in an interview, or maybe it's your networking file. Okay, who's who I'm networking with? Here's the calendar. Here's who I need to follow, all that sort of thing. So you've got a nice organized book. Now, if you're an unorganized person that lays all over your desk, okay, you can do that sort of thing. But from an organizational standpoint, these are the kind of things that I suggest that you have ready and prepared so that you can not just, I don't want you to just copy what we do, but you've got to have your own questions as well. So these are samples to help you. But wouldn't it be great though, for you to have this set prepared so that when the call comes, you can flip to that page and then whang, here's your questions laid out for you right away. You might even put them on your phone. You might do something, carry that notebook with you because you never know where and when you get the call. All right, so enough on that. So what information do you have that interests you in contacting me? Some people call that the, what was it on your resume that interested you? Well, this is a lot more open-ended question. Both questions are okay, maybe if you know they have your resume, but it might say what information do you have, because it could be a referral. It could come from another source. You don't know exactly where they may have found out. So this is a very open-ended question, but what information do you have that interests you in contacting you? You also find out where did it come from. Now, I want to know who you are. So I'm not asking them who you are, who are you? But I want to say, what type of recruiting firm do you represent? What do you do? Okay, well, I'm internal, so I'm in, and their focus is to find a nice long-term fit and retention. They don't like turnover. They want to reduce risk. They want to have very low risk hires in their perspective. The contingency, I just got to get people placed. My main job is to properly present the best candidate I possibly can that fits this particular role. And I just want to get them placed. That's all I need to do. I don't care how long they stay or whatever. Retained, usually at the higher levels, executive levels that Mark's already talked about. And then there's the RPOs, the process outsourcing. I know that Toyota had a lot of outsourcing of recruiters when they moved here because they had to hire about 3,000 people. So they had it was kind of an outsource. So they were internal, but they did not work for Toyota directly. So who do you represent? What company? Who are you representing? A lot of them don't want to tell us because they're afraid we'll go around them. So if we just used, if you tell me that, I won't go around you, or some message to that effect, to reduce their concern about that. What's your industry or job specialty? So what fields do you work in? What areas do you represent? Where are you in the job search process? And in general, they research first, they screen second, they present third, and then the company is trying to decide and make a selection. So where are they in that process? It'd be nice to know which phase they're in at that point. And so have you placed people in the company before? Wouldn't that be nice to know? Wouldn't that be interesting to say, yeah, if you place people there? That means they know something, they know a lot more than the person who says, I have no idea. And how long have you been a recruiter? Recruiters have a pretty high turnover. It's a tough job. I'd never survive being a recruiter. The old "what have you done for me lately" thing, and it sounds like it might be not too difficult a job, but it's really hard. That's why they use all these applicant tracking systems, because they can't go through all this stuff today. And so I think it was Toyota that while they were placing jobs, they were getting like 2,000, 3,000 applications per job posting. For a while. People are moving to Dallas just to work for Toyota. So how long have you been? And over 3 years is a strong indicator. Over 5 years is a very strong indicator. And less than a year is saying, well, I know that you're still trying to get your feet on the ground. And how long Oh, contingent age. So now we're talking about the contingent age. So here's some questions you might ask them. I want to give them that, right? What do you name? Tell you my name and contact information. How'd you get it? Do you have a job description? I was listening to Kip Lifson. Kip and Mike Ray give the reference solutions example of finding target companies presentations around the neighborhood. And we were working on the presentation and he got a phone call, and his half of the phone call said, okay, yes, all right. Yeah, I'm interested. Okay. Do you have a job description? So I understand you'd like to know my salary. I would like to give you that information. However, I don't have any idea about the job or what the expectations are. Will you be able to provide one? He said, okay, great. Well, when I get that, I'll call you back and I'll give you your answer to your salary question. And he negotiated to get the job description before he answered the question. So what are you really looking for? That's the main question that's asked. What are the absolute requirements, the must-haves? Why do you think I'm a fit? I remember one person said, because I looked on the applicant tracking system and the word development was found and I chose you. All right, one word, okay? Not a real strict criteria for choice, but that was how that came about. What is their hiring process for this company? What's their style? What do they do? Some use behavioral interviewing. Some use just a series of lots of interviews over time, a strong series of them. All different ways of doing that. Some people have been hired very quickly. You only have a couple. What is it? Well, how do you get on board? What do you do? Do you know why the last person left in this last job? And that means also maybe that's a new position. You might want to find out. But was that job occupied? Why did that last person leave? And how long has it been open? That's a good question to ask, because the longer it's open, the more you're concerned. You say, well, I wonder why they haven't found somebody within this amount of time. What's going on? One person went through such a long process and they made him an offer and he turned it down. He said, I'm turning it down because I just get the feeling through this process, this company has a hard time making decisions. And that's not the culture that it's something like, like that, a little bit nicer maybe than I'm saying, but saying it wasn't worth it, because he could see, I can remember when Ross Perot was talking to General Motors when GM bought EDS, and he was saying, well, it only took 4 years to win the war. How come it takes 6 years to build a car? He says, if we find a snake, we kill it. General Motors, you form a committee, you hire a consultant, do things. It takes you 2 years to make a decision. And that's why they bought him out. But what's the culture like? There ought to be a book on the GM EDS culture merger. You could not get more far end of the spectrum on types of companies than that. Now, a corporate recruiter, what do you talk about with them? Now they can talk a little bit more because they have more company knowledge than, in general, than other recruiters will have. What's the responsibilities day to day? What are characteristics? What's your favorite part? Sample questions here. What opportunities will I be working with most closely, etc. Not going to read them all to you. This will be available on a recording, and you can certainly get these later, or you can do a print screen or a copy of your screen. So what do they look for in a resume? The quality of the presentation, your format, organization, flow, and easy to read. Which one of these would you look at first? Well, on the left, I'm presenting, that resume is presenting pithy, clear, concise information relevant to the job. On the right, I have to read too much to find out what matches and what's looking for. Remember, the resume is not your life history. It's enough information to convince them to give you a phone call. So how does it look? The white space, etc. The hard skills that match, your accomplishments, both hard and soft, your career progression, years of experience, type, size. So they're looking at a lot of different things, but these are some of the major ones that they're concerned about to say if they're going to put you on the short list. Face-to-face, when we're online or meeting face-to-face, that positive first impression is oh so critical, all right? It's your chance to strongly differentiate yourself from other candidates. If you walk in and say, hi, it's great to be here. I look forward to, I'm excited to be here and talk with you. And that's it. We're missing an opportunity to really sell who I am, what I do, and how I help, and differentiate yourself, show that energy and interest. We're not overeager. The company knowledge that we have, that really blows our hiring managers and interviewers away with the knowledge we have about the company. We ask good questions, meaning that we're asking the questions that we need to know to make sure it's a match for us as well as for them. They ask us their list of questions. What's our list of questions? And then, of course, honesty. Briefly here, knockout questions. The short answers, the yes or no's, scale of 1 to 5, select all. We do, recruiters particularly do a lot of knockout questions right up front. It's not fair, all right? I just tell you, it's not fair because you just can't tell, you can't describe a football game as saying the score was 21-19. That does not at all describe the football game itself. But that's what they use a lot in doing that. So, are you willing to work weekends? How about travel, relocation, overtime? The companies that say we do what it takes to get a job, that does not really spell out work-life balance that much, does it? So if you're really interested in work-life balance, that's a difficult thing to talk about during the interview, because if you say I'm interested in work-life balance, I get the message that you're not willing to work as hard as everybody else and do that sort of. Salary is a very popular question on salary. Legal questions, willing to submit to a drug test, those kind of things. Qualifications, you have the degree, the license, the certification, experience, and what's your skill level, all right? Very soon, these are the absolute requirements. If you don't have these things, they'll just knock you out. The culture fit, you work alone, part of a team, loud environment, all right? That's an interesting thing. I wonder what the environment's really like. Your preferred work style, adapt to change, when you're passionate about. And let me tell you the final thoughts. Number one, we need to let it be known to recruiters what we're looking for, how we can clarify the specific expectations that we have so that they can work it with us very easily. The harder we make them work to help us, the less they're going to help us. Convey our career goals. Keep your resume and your LinkedIn information current. Be courteous and respectful, right? To everybody you speak. Follow through with any commitments you make. Always follow through. Equip them so that they can best represent us and use their preferred method of communication. Offer referrals. Help them do their work. You want to make an impression on somebody, help them. That's the Help One Person Every Day, the South Lake Focus Group, HOPE. But help a recruiter. So maybe I can send you some other people who may be interested in other roles or things like that. And stay connected even after we've landed. A no, and Jeff's working on a no document, but a no means that they have changed their relationship from a prospective employer or prospective recruiter to a connection. And now they are a connection. I can nurse that connection and still work with them over the future. Okay.
That is our presentation. If you have questions, Mark is with us, Walt is with us. You're welcome to unmute your mic and ask any questions you've got.
May I ask something?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I am Banu Nathan, and I was just going through what both of you have been mentioning, Mark and Walt. Thank you so much. My question is, okay, I'm an international medical graduate with over a decade and more of experience in clinical medicine. I'm a physician trained here, and we migrated here about 3 years back. I was been in teaching at Philadelphia. We moved to Texas less than 2 months now. Okay, so I just giving this background just to understand. And I see that when you say you go with the recruiter, are you suggesting that, or do you think it will be useful that you take a recruiter on and seek their help to go about this to everybody, to meet with your employers? In your experience, what would you suggest?
Who wants to take that? I mean, I guess the core of your question is, do you want to deal with recruiters, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, Walt?
Okay, well, let me share my thoughts. And so the first thought is recruiters aren't designed or paid to help find you a job. If you're a good match for something they're engaged in already, then they'll be interested in you. And if you aren't, then they won't. They may take your information, they may talk to you a bit and then put you in their file, but you're in their database just like you'd be if you put it online. So I think, as we talked about in preparing to interview, you really need to spend some time figuring out where you want to work, okay? And then by doing informational networking or using the tools that are available in Reference USA, I can't remember what it's called now. And then you can go to work trying to find recruiters or even the top recruiter in those companies, okay? Because they are likely to have jobs that are good for you. And so that would be on the corporate side, not agency recruiters. They work for the company, the hospital or whatever it is, the clinic. And I think you'll have much more success working with those kinds of recruiters. Well,
So ditto on that. That's I have two choices or two recommendations. Mark just gave a very eloquent description of the first choice, working with an inside recruiter, inside a corporation, inside a company that you target, that you want to work for. And then there's the contingency side. Most of us are not going to work with a retained executive search if our job is not, executive level. So if we're at the professional level. So do your work to find the recruiter through whatever process. We talked different ways of finding out which recruiter would be worthwhile working. The questions that we ask: do they work in our field? Do they work in all that sort of thing? Have they placed people there before? Are they worked for a long time? We do all of that, but build a relationship with a specific recruiter. When you get to know them, try to go see them, visit them, build that relationship with them in contact, and keep that contact with them. But you only want to work with, once you do all this homework, you're just working with that person a small amount of your time. Because working with multiple recruiters has the fewest return, but finding one and keeping in touch with one that is in your industry, your job, that represent the companies or have relationships with the companies that are your target companies, if they meet all that criteria, then just have one of them who does that work with you. And that's nights works and weekend work. It's not your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday work where you're doing other things more valuable with informational interviewing or real interviews or even practicing. So that's my second. So the internal is great, making connections with those. And then if it's an external one, find one that that somebody else has used and they give them a good recommendation that fits 6 or 7 criteria that you say, this is the right recruiter for me.
Thank you so much, both of you. That really is a good insight for me. And okay, maybe it would have been a little tangential the way I had put my question across, but what I had felt is, as a healthcare professional with over a decade and more of experience, I have been struggling to translate or to convince people here about my experience and my work that was primarily in Southeast Asia. So, and also from what I have seen, I'm a member of the South Lake Focus Group, which is how I came to know about the DFW and I have come here. So, when I was going through this interview process, what you were mentioning today, the training, the webinar, for the most part, you were mentioning about how our resume be, how the PIT interview can be, what do we know? And then you also mentioned about the recruiter. So I just picked on this aspect of the recruiter because I wanted to know if that would be of something which I may need to pursue. But now my question is, which works better generally, especially in the healthcare sector, to go about it ourselves. I do not have much contacts here. All my colleagues who have been here have generally been in the clinical, as in clinical alone. They have not moved on to clinical operations or other aspects. Or would it help if I go in for a recruiter?
Would it help if you what?
If I research and take up a recruiter who is taking up for health consultancy roles, will that help me?
Well, how much time do you think you should spend with a recruiter?
Yeah. See, one is if I have to do my research well, maybe it will take me minimum 4 to 5 days is what I'm thinking. If I'm spending my whole time on it to get the proper recruiter, I would go with one person instead of taking 3 or 4, and then going through them to build a relationship, as you were mentioning. I do not know how long, but again, if I want to give it some time, maybe another week.
Well, the time frame is where you just keep connecting with them and trying to be top of mind once you go through the work to get that. And I'm just talking about the retained, not the retained, but the contingency recruiter. I'm not talking about the internal recruiters, because I would spend a lot more time researching and working and connecting to internal recruiters. You've got a 50% chance of person A that knows person B that knows someone in that company that you're targeting. And then that someone in the company can also get you to the recruiter inside of that company. So working that channel, it's amazing. It's an amazing statistic that your 50% chance of success in going through 2 people to get to that person is very high and worth your work to do that. Does that answer your question?
It does. Unfortunately, we are not soft skill trained to get to move to those people. So I have to work on it.
Yeah, you know, and I
Yes,
think
thank you.
something else to remember too is that 5 to 10% of jobs are found online. 10 to 15% of jobs are found using a recruiter. 75 to 80% of jobs are found via networking. Who do you know in a company who can get your name, get your resume, get your biography, 1-page bio to somebody inside the company? Because that's, I mean, I think that's where you focus on. You can't focus on, like Mark said, you can't focus on a recruiter is not going to get you a job. You just have to find the right recruiter who's got one. Now, in the Suzanne put something in the chat window about a medical staffing company, so it may be something you want to check out, and so they put that in there. And I know, Gary, you've got something you want to say?
I've already talked with Manu in the past.
Yes.
Because she lives far north in the Dallas area, what I would recommend would be, even if she just goes to the library or do Google searching on medical recruiters for Frisco and Plano. They'd be closer. There's some other groups that you might be able to network with in that area. But I think that would cut down on the wasted time and give her more push in a certain direction.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, I'll check that. Yeah.
Great. All right, anybody else have any questions before we go? I know we're running really late today. Any other questions, comments? All right, well, gentlemen, thank you all very much. Let me share a few slides and we will get out of here. Career DFW, Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us. Let's see here. Tomorrow being the first Thursday of the month. It's hard to believe tomorrow's September 1st. We're 2/3 of the way through the year. We're going to talk about effective resumes, the best practice for an effective resume. And the second part of the session, if anybody would like to volunteer and submit their resume, we'll be glad to take a look at their resume online. This Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, being the first Friday of every month, we do open forum. We'll talk about whatever it is you'd like to talk about your job search. You're welcome to join us, 9:30 Friday morning Central Time. Next Tuesday for LinkedIn Tuesdays, Locke Alderson will be with us to talk about how to use LinkedIn for job hunting. strategies to get results. And Mark, do you want to talk about the 13-part workshop again? Oop, you're muted. Nope, Mark, you're still muted. Okay, well, Mark's muted and thinks he's talking and can't. Let's see. Well, he can't unmute for some reason. Okay, well, there's 13-part workshop. It's all on the Career USA YouTube channel. You're welcome to watch them. The first 5 lessons that they mentioned during the seminar talks. What do you do before the interview? Preparation for an interview, getting your STAR stories ready to go, analyzing the job description. The next 5 lessons talk about what do you do during the interview? How do you handle things during the interview? Things you need to know, showing enthusiasm, how to build rapport, how to discuss that compensation question, how to open and close an interview. And then the last 3 sessions are some advanced topics. Once you've gotten the first 10 down, just some basic things. And then, of course, the best one is the very last one. You know what you're not supposed to do, but you do it anyway. And it just happens over and over and over again. So just avoiding some interview crashes, some basic things that they see. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, this is where you'll find those 13 lessons. Just click on playlist, and at the very bottom, pick resumes, interviewing, LinkedIn, whichever one you want. Don't click on the video, but down below, click what says view full playlist, and then up will come a list of all the different dates and topics, and you can scroll down and find the lesson that you'd like to watch over and over again. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops and you'd like to join the Career USA mailing list, just send an email to Career USA, the + subscribe at groups.io. You will never be spammed, but what you will get is every day the topic of the day, the title of the day, and most importantly, the Zoom link of the day. That way you can grab your lunch, grab your breakfast, and join us on the Zoom meeting. Please remember, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. Mark and Walt are both volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Everything I've done over the last 14 years has just been to help you land your next great opportunity. So thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. Have a great Wednesday and hump day, and we'll see you all hopefully tomorrow or one day next week.